Welcome to Wine Soundtrack Australia. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world.
In 30 ounces, discover their stories, personalities and passions.
Hello friends and listeners of your Wine Soundtrack. My name is Priscilla Hennikamp. I'm here with Fran from Delamere Vineyards. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Tell us, where are you located?
We're in Pipers Brook in Tasmania.
Tell us what about sparkling from Tasmania.
What's about sparkling from Tasmania? That's a very big question. We think it's certainly one of the most important sparkling wine regions outside of Champagne. But climatically and spiritually, it's just an amazing place to be, to make sparkling wine, yeah.
You have quite a bit sparkling in your range, right?
Correct. It's about 80% of our production. So it was a conscious decision about 10 years ago to focus very heavily on sparkling and build up Tirage stock. But it was an opportunity born from the climate and what was going on in the region.
So tell us, so you just use traditional method?
Absolutely. The aim of, one, we can't afford to use any other way. But yeah, I guess the opportunity to use such pure fruit has been, it would be criminal to do anything else other than the traditional method with it.
Good Pinot Noir, good Chardonnay here as well?
Absolutely. I actually bought the property, probably 14 or 15 years ago now, with the aim to just make table Chardonnay and table Pinot Noir. The previous owner did have a couple of sparkling wines here, and I think 2 or 3 years in we realised just how special the opportunity was. We do make table Pinot every year, but secretly I'd much rather just be making sparkling wine.
And why the name Dalemere?
It was the previous owner. He named it after a forest in England that was owned by a French nobleman. But we like to say that it truly reflects of the mother, is something that, as you translate it to English, is something that's really special.
So, and how many hectares do you have here?
It's a 56 hectare property, but we currently have 15 hectares under vine. We've sort of planned for another 5 or 6 hectares in the next few years, but really what we've got now, 15 hectares, is what we're playing with.
Good. And what varieties you have planted?
Just the Holy Trinity, Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. It's probably equal split of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, and we've just planted a hectare of Pinot Noir this year, so it'll be a few years before that comes on track. But really excited to see something new and different here.
Do you expect it to plant any other varieties outside of Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, the traditional grapes varieties from Champagne?
It's not in the foreseeable future. It's climatically, Pipers Brook is probably right on the edge of being a good table wine region. We do make beautiful table wines here, really tight lemon acidity in the Chardonnays and very savoury Pinot Noirs. And so as we think these regions will start to warm up in the next decade, we think that we'll probably be coming closer to being in the pocket for those table wines. So for us, for me, I certainly believe that those 3 varieties will do really well here, and that's what we focus on.
Perfect. And do you export, or everything's in Australia?
We do. We have been had a limited amount going to export, so we're sending some wine into Asia at the moment, with hopes to send into the UK and the US in coming years. But the biggest thing that I think that COVID's brought about is that the Australian domestic market has really exploded. The sales through cellar door and direct to consumer have been really strong. And there's been, I guess, a real pivot or change in the way domestic sales works, with a lot more people buying online with the websites. But in the long term, we're hoping that the new expansion of the vineyard will give us an opportunity to go into some export markets that we would hopefully visit in years to come.
Sounds good. Do you have enough bottles? How many bottles do you make per year?
Never, ever have enough bottles. I wish. I used to have a lot of bottles, but now our biggest problem with Dalemere is, I guess, building our tirage age. So we had hoped to sort of maintain that 12 to 18 months with our non-vintages, but because of sales pressure and demands from our distributors and the public, we've quite often find ourselves selling out of wine, and that's hence not exporting too much wine at the moment, just because the challenges of maintaining and growing terroir ages are really, I guess, the biggest problem with sparkling production.
Yeah. So do you believe in a perfect variety here in Tasmania? If you have to choose just one, you'd be Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, or something else?
I mean, if I had to go to a desert island with nothing else, it would be Chardonnay. It would be foolish to believe. I think that wine is such a personal thing that you could put 5 winemakers in a room and would have 10 different opinions about what that single variety would be. But if it was to be only one variety, I would always pick Chardonnay.
And how this passion about wine started? Share with us.
Well, my journey to wine really came about growing up in and around the Barossa Valley in South Australia as a kid, and friends and business acquaintances of my father were winemakers, and growing up with the children of winemakers is both a dangerous thing for your liver as a teenager, but also a really exciting thing. And so for me, I didn't start in wine. I went and was a marine ecologist for a long time, but the pull of wine was always going to be there. And it was really coming to Tasmania and seeing the opportunity that the wine industry had here, and that it was a new beginning. It was 2000, 2001 was really the start of the next phase in the Tasmanian wine industry, a new generation of winemakers and a new generation of trained and educated winemakers getting together. And it was like we were kids in a toy store. We just were in our early 30s and had an opportunity to forge style again, coming from regions where wine styles were almost set in stone. There was very little in the way of development and change. Not so that you don't see that now in places like the Barossa, but back there in the 90s there was certainly just one variety that worked, and that's what they wanted to do. Whereas Tasmania, it was like there was an opportunity to do just about anything you wanted, which was really exciting.
Not too cold for you here, Shan?
Love it. I much prefer the cold. I like a doona and a fire, and my wife would probably dearly love to be living in Western Australia, where it's a little bit warmer. But for me, I'd much rather go on a ski holiday, and Tassie's, the opportunity that cool climate viticulture brings is pretty amazing. And it's beautiful here in winter, the beautiful sunny days and not too many tourists, so you don't have to share it with everybody, which is great.
And then what do you think about the warmer climate? Will you be like something very benefit for Tasmania?
I think that as the climate changes here, although, I still am yet to see a pattern of change that crazily. We seem to be getting earlier and later every different year, but there doesn't seem to be a real pattern forming here yet. We don't seem to be getting earlier and earlier, but I think as things warm up here, if they do and when they do, that there will be new challenges, certainly more disease challenges and things like that. But I'm hoping that maybe some of the warmer parts of Tassie might see some new varieties, Nebbiolo, Shiraz, those types of things coming in, which would be really exciting just to see a bit of diversity. But we've got, friends planting that now, and they're really having a crack. In a year like this, when it's raining in April like this, I'm pretty happy just to be doing sparkling in Pinot and Chardonnay. So we're nice and picked, and I can enjoy the sound of rain on the roof.
So tell a little bit about the climate here. It's raining quite a bit.
It's a fascinating region, this Pipers River in particular, and what's interesting about it is that we get quite an even dispersal of rain throughout the year. We're probably around that 700-800 average mils of rain on average every year, but what's different about here is we're not inside of a rain shadow, so we get a quite even dispersal of rain. The warmer air masses, the northerlies, have to cross Bass Strait to get to us, and then the southerlies, which are our coldest air mass, they have to cross Tasmania or come across soon. What happens is that the diurnal range, that difference between maximum and minimum, is very narrow here, which makes us very unique, and it means that we retain beautiful natural acidity, very high malic acids, obviously very conducive to making sparkling wine because we don't have big temperature spikes. We're retaining a lot of those really delicate aromatic fruit flavours. So winemaking we can be very liberal in the way that we use natural fermentation and things like that. We can let ferments race a little bit more and know that we're going to have fruit flavours there at the other end of it. So winemaking wise, there's probably less constrictions put on us because of the climate and because of the intensity of flavours that we have. But it also means that the diversity in the styles of wine that we're making, so in a really cold, tight year, we can be making really amazing Blanc de Blancs, but in, much warmer, drier years, we can be making amazing table wines that still have beautiful lemon and citrus and, amazing longevity.
Great. I'm so excited to try some wines today. So, do you have a cellar in your home? Do you have any expensive champagne or any expensive Tasmanian wines?
I'm probably the worst collector of wine in the history of mankind. It's like burning a hole in my pocket every time. We love sharing and collecting really lovely bottles of wine, but to be honest, we drink them very quickly and just like to replenish them as often as we can. We do like to hold on to our sparklings for a couple of years just because that's when we think they're drinking their best. But I have a winery full of wine and I must admit my cellar gets deteriorated very rapidly every day.
So if you imagine someone drinking your wine, so VIP, famous person, can be a singer, can be anyone. So do you have anyone in your mind you'd like to see drinking your wine in overseas and someone is special? And then if you have even a magazine, you take a picture and you put it for everyone see around the world. Do you have anyone in your mind you'd like to see drinking your wines?
I've never, in the whole time that I've owned the place, I always get a buzz out of walking to a restaurant and seeing absolutely anybody drinking a bottle of Dalemere. It's been really, it's actually can be quite a surreal experience for me because we do live in a bit of a bubble in these businesses because you are so busy. And so when you do go into the market or into trade and you see people enjoying a product and you don't, you go into a restaurant for dinner and you see somebody at a table drinking it, you can't help but stop and look at it. Any single person in particular? Probably not. I just think that, no, not really. I don't have anyone. As long as whomever it is, I see them drinking and enjoying it and having fun with their friends and enjoying their meal, and that it's not somebody that is intrusive but that makes it an amazing experience. I think I've always felt that wine is something that should be complementary to it. So as long as there's no paparazzis annoying the arse out of it, I don't care.
Good answer. So everyone who drinks Dalemere wines, we are happy. So tell us, each vintage is here is a different story. What are you talking about? Like each vintage, what's the difference between vintages in Tasmania?
Tasmania, to me, really boils down to, like a lot of regions, how warm and still it is during flowering. And when are we going to get a break in the weather? When do the frosts come and when does it start to rain like it is today? We are, as we were sort of talking about before, we are blessed with quite a stable climate, but we are used to having rainfall evenly dispersed throughout the year. So we are, we are going and spraying and putting protectants out as often as we need to, and that is quite frequently if we're following, organic or biodynamic strategies on some vineyards, or even more commercial chemical strategies, you're still having to spray very regularly. So Tassie's best seasons are the seasons when we get to choose when to harvest and we're not dictated to by the weather. For sparkling, that happens almost every year. It's very unusual that we would have a bad year with sparkling, and that's a big part of why we choose to do the sparkling program we have. But the really great years here are probably when we've had a little bit of cold and windy weather over flowering and fruit set, so that we've got a little bit of hen and chicken or mille-orange, and then a really long, beautiful, dry ripening period, so that you've got, these really lovely concentrated fruit flavours, and then, but also retain a little bit of acid structure, so that the wines have got a bit more life and longevity in the future.
So each vintage was like the amazing vintage, like the outstanding wines comes from that vintage so far.
We've had some horror shows. There's no question. I can think back to 2004, and I remember standing in a winery watching a floodplain under about a metre of water going, this is just crazy. So it hasn't not had its challenges in the past. But for me, I think of sparkling production here in Tasmania a bit like vintages in Western Australia. They have occasionally Western Australia will have a bad vintage, but for the most part, it's always just amazing and it's a place that you want to be. For me, there's always going to be something sneaking up in Tasmania, so you never know. But I've yet to meet a winemaker that's ever admitted to having a bad vintage. Okay, they're always just really amazing, and you should just be drinking every vintage anyway.
So when you were very little, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I always wanted to be a marine biologist. That's what I wanted to be. The idea that, little Jacques Cousteau floating around the water doing things. And I think that's why that was why I followed that dream when I finished school. But there's a beautiful artisan side to winemaking. I'm an art tragic, but I can't paint to save my life. And I love science, and so to me, wine is that beautiful balance of art and science. And it's but playing with the seasons and seeing the variations and the changes that are occurring in the fruit in that season, but also then the things that we can do with winemaking and secondary winemaking things. The longer you own these businesses, the fewer compromises you make, and the more you've seen something before and you know that something's worked or not. We still love trialling new things, and there's always a new yeast to have a look at, or a new nutrient to play with, or a protocol to use. But for the most part, there's no real secrets and there's no real stuff. So the opportunity to play as a winemaker is something that's been really great. But secretly, I'd really love to be a marine biologist again. But there's no money in it. There's absolutely no money in it at all.
So, going to the next questions. What do you recommend for people eating when you're drinking or sparkling?
Oh, that can be a loaded question, because everything, isn't it? What Madame Clicquot said, every meal, anytime. For me, what I really love, I love the way that the acidity in these wines are there to cut through just about anything in terms of anything that sort of might have blocked up your palate a little bit. But for me, beautiful desserts or things like that, it's, sparkling is one of those wines that you can use at any time. But pre-dinner with some cheese it's always been my favourite time.
We see a lot of oysters in the region. Oyster and sparkling is be a good match?
Yeah, well, that was sort of a bit of my background, and in terms of I did do a little bit of oyster production in part of my job. Yes, look, absolutely. This seafood is always a beautiful match, and Tasmanian oysters are amazing, and certainly something you should try while you're down here. But look, come on, absolutely.
I had that experience yesterday. It was amazing. So, questions about you. How many bottles or how many glasses needed to see you drunk, to get you drunk?
You've been talking to my wife. At this time of year, we would quite comfortably, you don't want to see our living room. We have a friend that comes down every year, and we quite comfortably go through 2 or 3 dozen bottles of wine a week. So that gives you an idea of probably, it would be 2 or 3 bottles of wine in an afternoon to maybe see myself get a little bit of a wobble up, but we might have to have a few beers as well. So.
I noticed very good winemakers always have a beer in the fridge, yeah?
Yeah, that fridge behind you has probably got about 3 or 4 cases of beer in it, and we'll have those 3 or 4 cases every single day of the week, believe me. We don't run out of beer here very often. Look, it's we work really hard, and it's, and so it's nice to sit back and look at a very full winery and have a beer at the end of the day and look at a job well done. So
relax a little bit. And then what do you do the next day for recover yourself after very bad hangover?
See, this is about getting old and wise, is that I think winemakers are really good at learning to know which drink is the one that sends them over the edge. And so the key to being really good at drinking is not to have that glass of wine that sends you over the edge. So from us, it's, maybe waiting until after lunch, but having a beer in the afternoon. But on those really shabby days, and nothing like a really good Bloody Mary. So that's my favourite.
What do you do when you have a free time? Do you have a free time?
Not at this time of year. Never at this time of year. Look, I still really love surfing and windsurfing, and so I do that a lot. So we're not far from the coast here, and so we just jump in the car and get out of here on a windy day and go and hang out with some friends who are a bit like-minded and are able to have some free time during the day now. But to be honest, with a young family and a busy business like this, we don't get many free days anymore. Most of the time we're just driving to soccer training or swimming training or something like that. So, yeah.
Busy life. So, do you have any sport in particular you like to practice, or not really?
Yeah, for sure. If and when I can get away, we love to go snow skiing. So that's something that we like to spend a good month doing every year if we can. But outside of that, I always love to go to the beach for a surf or a sailboard. It's something that, it's just really lovely to be able to get away and do something that's a bit personal and isolated, not a team sport or anything like that. Just something where you can stick your headphones in your ears and let the world go by and turn your phone on silent and nobody can call me, and you don't have to think too much about what's going on in a ferment or anything like that. So it's a nice thing to be able to do.
Yeah, just forget about life for a little bit. So, complete the sentence. A day without wine is like?
It's not a good day. It's not a good day at all.
And then when do you have any good lucky ritual when the harvest is about to start? Do you have anything you do every year before the harvest is started just to make sure everything's going to be right?
I have a personal ritual that occasionally I will share with a friend if he's around, but the first day that we rack of the clarified juice out of our first press, we make a gin and juice. So we get a bottle of Hendrick's gin and fill a wine glass up with freshly poured juice, and then top it up with maybe 3 shots of gin, and then we sit back and we toast the new vintage gin. So I've done that every year for 13 years, but I usually probably do it by myself, to be honest.
And tell us, 2021, how this vintage is going?
It's really been amazing, and like I know I said that's a very cliched thing to us because they've always been amazing, but it's probably been I've never seen sugar accumulation occur so quickly, and we had rain in the middle of vintage and that didn't affect anything. We had but we've retained this amazing acid structure, so we had sugar accumulation, and then we just didn't get the significant deterioration in acid. So it's really caught a few of us off guard that traditionally we would be harvesting sparklings, that sort of between 9 and 10.5% alcohol, but flavour ripenesses were and phenolic ripeness was really coming in at closer to 11 and 11.5%. So, and I think that was really born from, we had a really we had a rain event, and that the sugars just kept accumulating. So it's the first time I've ever seen that. But the wines are amazing because traditionally we would really be playing in that sort of more lemon and citrus end of the spectrum with our Blanc de Blancs, but we're actually seeing stone fruit and in the ferments, which is a beautiful thing to see. And so, we still got amazing, really high malic acids, which will, give wines that will have beautiful structure and elegance in years to come. But there's going to be some really interesting blending components. We've got lots of different parcels in the winery this year, and there's going to be some really interesting sort of much more riper notes that we probably wouldn't have seen in years past, which is exciting.
So excited, 2021 vintage. So have you been to other parts of the seas? Have you been to Champagne? Did you like to explore any other regions in the world?
So yeah, absolutely. Obviously, having grown up and running around Australia a lot, but I've done vintages in Oregon and Europe, and it's one of those, Europe to me is always going to be, I guess, the true homeland of bubbles or sparkling wine, and Champagne. It's hard to imagine a more amazing region in the world in terms of marketing, but also just farming in general. Obviously in the last few years we really haven't had the opportunity to travel, but the last time I did a long trip was 2017, and we spent a month in Champagne and didn't do any work, just ran around and met people. And I think the thing that really surprised me is how open everyone was, and once they understood and they knew where Tasmania was and they knew what we were doing, and they were really interested in talking about things. And I think when you go to regions that have such strict, well, not strict rules, but have, a lot of traditional winemaking going on, it's really lovely to see people that understand that we've probably got a little bit more freedom than they've got, and they're always interested to hear, the stories of the challenges and the things that we do. But really spending time with people in their region and starting to learn and understand what the climate does and what the soil does and how that influences wine style and winemaking has been really interesting. So I love the opportunity to travel like that. I hope to get that again in years to come. I hope that things are selling well here. It's just that we don't seem to have any time. So I think we'll have to make more time in years to come.
The COVID situation affected too bad your business? How was for you guys in Dalemere about COVID?
So this time last year we made a decision to go 100% sparkling, because we honestly sat down with one another and said, what happens if we don't sell another bottle of wine for the next 12 months? Or how long can we actually not sell wine for and still retain ownership of the property? What are we going to mothball the vineyard? What do we do? So we made a conscious decision to not make table wine, because we thought, well, it's an opportunity to build tirage age. And for the first 2 months while everybody was in lockdown, things did quieten off. We shut cellar door, and we renewed focus on online sales and things like that, and communicating with our mailing list and our wine club membership and things like that. But after about 2 weeks, we realised that orders kept coming through the door, and all of a sudden people were drinking more, but instead of things slowing down, they actually sped up, which was quite confusing. So we were caught out a little bit, and we'll be behind because we won't have table wines for the next 12 months. But, that's all right. We've got a huge supply of, here we're thinking, this is going to be exciting. We're going to be able to build tirage age with our non-vintages in particular. And what in actual fact has happened is that it's very lucky we made such a big make of sparkling last year, because sales of sparkling have exploded. And coming out of COVID, they were good during COVID, but as restaurants opened up again, brands like Delamere were really able to get a good grounding and a much better start than we thought, because we didn't discount ourselves. We just maintained what we were doing and had a group of people around us. So COVID has actually been amazingly good for the business. It's also been good because I didn't have so many people at the early part during the cellar tour.
Good to hear that. So good to hear you guys good with after this whole COVID situation. So let's have some fun now. Let's play a game. Are you ready?
No. I'm not singing. There's no way I'm singing. My cellar door manager, he's the head baritone for Opera Australia, so if there's any singing involved with this, he's going to be doing the singing.
No. Actually, I have another way to play with this game with you. So I just tell you the famous people, and then you just need to tell me which grape variety they are matching with these people and why.
Why I match with them and why? Okay.
So let's start with someone like Michael Jackson.
I'm a child of the 80s, so Thriller was the best album I ever. It was the first album that I actually bought with my own money. So there you go. Does that work? Is this how this game works, or is that related? Is that relating enough to it? Yeah.
And the grape. The juicy one grape is actually matching.
It works with Michael Jackson. Gee whiz. Okay. Wish you'd given me notice on this one. Come on. I don't know.
What do you like to drink when you listen Michael Jackson?
What am I drinking when I play? I don't know if I'd be drinking something with the grape. I'd be drinking like a spirit of some description, probably a gin and tonic or something like that. That's what I'd be drinking. So let's make it a gin made out of some of my juice. There you go.
So if you have someone very bubbly like a Beyonce.
Bubbles for sure. Absolutely bubbles. Cristal. Sitting in the back of a pimped out van drinking Cristal. That's all they drink, isn't it?
It is actually. Beyonce and the Cristal, yeah. That's so true. And talk about politicians. Michelle Obama.
Oh.
Serious.
So it would have to be, to me, it would have to be a Pinot from the US somewhere, so Sonoma or something like that. So maybe Hitchin. But a really nice, or a big Cabernet from Opus One or something something that's a little bit harder to get, that's going to cost a little bit more money, but because she's Michelle Obama, she's going to get her hands on it.
And Donald Trump?
There's this box of wine that you can get that, let's just say, I'm not going to say an Australian brand at all, but it's definitely, there's something about multimillionaires that, supposedly, that they all drink really cheap booze. So something that's going to cost me less than $5 at Dan Murphy's.
And then Pablo Picasso?
A little bit crazy and a little bit cool. So I'm going to say a Gruner with lots of skin contact.
Good. So thank you so much for the interview today. Would you like to remind us how to reach your cellar door and your website address, please?
No worries. Well, we're here in Pipers Brook. So if you're ever in Tasmania, please do come up into the region and have a look. And our website's online, so you can get us at delamerevineyards.com. But thanks for coming along.
Thank you so much, Shane.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack Australia. For details and updates, visit our website, winesoundtrack.com.